Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to the Brooklyn public hearing on proposed fiscal year 2017 New York City water rates. My name is Eric Landau, and I'll serve as the hearing officer for tonight's meeting. Before we begin, I'd like to take a minute to give a brief overview of tonight's process. First, we'd like to thank St. Francis College for hosting us. Second, we'd like everyone to note that there are certain documents that we place into the official record which are maintained by the New York City Water Board. The notice designating me as the hearing officer, a copy of the public notices listing this hearing, and an affidavit of publication of such notices, the draft of the proposed water and wastewater rate schedule, the public information booklet regarding water and wastewater rates, copies of which are available just outside on the front table, and all written statements that have been submitted by the public to the Water Board. These items are marked as Exhibits 1 through 5. In just a moment, we will hear a presentation from Steve Lawitz from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection on this year's water rate proposal, and then we will open up the meeting to hear comments from the public. If you've not yet signed up to speak but would like to do so, please take a moment to do so at the registration table, again, at the table just outside. Please know that you can also submit written testimony to the New York City Water Board up until the close of business on May 12th. All statements will be entered into the record, and copies will be distributed to the Water Board members for their review and consideration prior to their adoption of a rate schedule for fiscal year 2017. The individuals joining me here are New York City Water Board member Jonathan Golden and Water Board member Adam Freed, who will be serving as chair for this evening's proceedings. Also joining us, New York City Water Board Acting Executive Director Steve Lawitz and New York City Water Board Treasurer Omar Nazim. Before we begin, I'll turn it over to Adam Freed to say a few words.
Thank you. I'll keep this short, but just want to first and foremost thank those of you from the public who have come to join us tonight. We greatly value and look forward to your input as we go through the deliberative process of considering the proposal that's before the board. There are a lot of other places you could choose to be tonight, and we appreciate that you chose to be with us. I'd also like to stress that this is very much a hearing where we're here to listen to the public. There is a proposal before the board, but in no way, shape, or form has the board made up its mind on how to act on that. That'll be done in a hearing next week, where we'll be taking a vote. So very much appreciate you being here and looking forward to considering all of the testimony that comes before us during this process.
Thank you, Adam. At this time, we will turn it over to Steve Lawitz from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection to give a presentation on the proposed water rate. Steve?
Thank you, Eric. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. And this is our rate proposal for the fiscal year that begins July 1st. Water and infrastructure have been in the news a lot lately. Hardly a day goes by when the news isn't covering the crisis in Flint, Michigan, or a disaster of another kind where infrastructure is not maintained or has not been upgraded to deal with the effects of climate change, or going a little further away to Rio in this case. The surrounding waters of Rio are polluted and are in fact jeopardizing this year's Olympics, which are going to be held there. And a report by one of our industry associations, the American Water Works Association, identifies nearly $2 trillion of unmet infrastructure needs in water utilities all across the country. I show you these pictures. I want to reassure you that none of what you've seen is in New York or has happened in New York. And we'll go through this and understand how New York is doing things differently and investing money to keep the water flowing and to keep the surrounding harbor the cleanest that it's been in 100 years. So over the last 15 years, we've invested nearly $30 billion in our infrastructure. The water system, as we know it, began in 1842. and some of our infrastructure is very old, but we keep investing in it. Examples are the Croton filtration plant, which began operation a year ago this month. City Water Tunnel number 3, which has been under construction since 1970. We opened the leg in southern Manhattan about 2.5 years ago, in October of 2013. And we are going to be, in this capital plan, finishing the construction of the leg that will serve Queens and Brooklyn. On the wastewater treatment side, where we're cleaning up the harbor water surrounding New York, we've made a lot of investments. $5 billion in our Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant. This is just an example. This is our largest treatment plant, but we're making millions and millions of dollars of investments in our other 13 wastewater treatment plants also. On the bottom, the Flushing Creek stormwater retention facility, combined sewer overflow facility, which keeps combined sewage from flowing out into Flushing Bay during a heavy rainstorm. And over the next 10 years, we are going to invest nearly $17 billion in both water and wastewater infrastructure. Some examples of what we will be investing in: the repair of the Delaware Aqueduct, which carries 50% of New York City's drinking water. As I mentioned a minute ago, completion of City Tunnel number 3 in Brooklyn and Queens. Oops, sorry. We are investing in stormwater control in Southeast Queens, $1.5 billion. When Southeast Queens was built out residentially, there were no storm sewers installed. There's no way to capture stormwater in this portion of Queens, and so we're investing $1.5 million to provide storm sewers for the first time. And across the city, but concentrated in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx, we're investing almost $1 billion in green infrastructure, which in this case will mean about 9,000 curbside gardens that will absorb stormwater during a heavy rain and keep that water from overwhelming our sewer system and our 14 wastewater treatment plants. Right here in Brooklyn, we are upgrading the Coney Island wastewater treatment plant on Knapp Street in Coney Island. A $70 million upgrade. This plant is one of 3 of our 14 plants that are run by engines, and so we are upgrading and replacing those engines. And the Gowanus Canal, which you probably all know is a Superfund site, but we are investing $1.1 billion in order to build tanks to capture combined sewage so that it doesn't overflow into the canal. And we are also working with the EPA to clean up the canal. But we can't stop with just investing in infrastructure. We also have to operate it and maintain it, and we have to test the water, both the drinking and the stormwater. And this is one way in which we're different from Flint and some other cities. We perform 500,000, 500,000 tests each year on drinking water quality, and 600,000 tests a year on harbor water quality, as I said earlier, in order to ensure that the harbor water continues to be the cleanest that it's been in over 100 years. We also manage ourselves by analyzing literally hundreds of metrics during the course of the year. Here's an example of just one of them, is confirmed sewer backups. And because of our investment in infrastructure and our paying attention to complaints that come in through 311, our routine investigation and analysis of the sewers, we have seen combined sewer backup complaints be reduced from over 5,000 5 years ago to under 3,000 today. So I've talked about infrastructure, personnel. We have nearly 6,000 employees at DEP. We're the third largest consumer of energy in the city, after the MTA and the 1,300 school buildings. And all of this costs money, and we are requesting a 2.1% rate increase. And we know that any rate increase is difficult, but this is the lowest rate increase in 16 years. You can see here the trend in rate increases that began 16 years ago, in the year 2000, and how it peaked in the mid-aughts, where we were making the greatest investments in our infrastructure in a period of just a few years. What does a 2.1% increase mean? It means that the price per gallon of water is going to go up 3/100ths of 1 cent per gallon. So it's going to go from 1.32 cents per gallon to 1.35 cents per gallon. Over the course of the year, for a typical single-family home, it means a $23 increase in their annual water bills. So that's about $1.85 a month, or to put it another way, if you go to the corner store and buy a bottle of water, that's about $1.85 a month. And we're suggesting you forego that purchased bottle of water, because buying bottled water is 60,000% more expensive than just filling a bottle from your tap. No, I didn't get that wrong, 60,000%. We are going to freeze the minimum charge for our customers who use small quantities of water. So for the 4th year in a row, the annual cost of being on the minimum charge will stay at $464. And for our 26,000 buildings that are on the Multifamily Conservation Program, and they pay a flat annual charge each year at the beginning of the fiscal year, they'll see an increase of about $21 per apartment per year. So even after a 2.1% increase, drinking water, or water and wastewater services that we provide, are the only component of the cost of living in New York City that's cheaper than it is elsewhere in the country. This chart shows major components of cost of living, comparing New York to the 30 largest cities in the U.S. On the left, to the left of the blue vertical line, are various comparisons of housing costs, much higher than in the rest of the country. And then you go down, and even though unleaded gasoline in New York City, the second one from the right, gas prices in New York City have begun to resemble those in the rest of the country, but they're still 1% higher in New York than they are in the rest of the country. But water and wastewater are 4% below the average for 30 large cities. Here's another way of looking at it. This shows the 30 large cities, with Chicago being on the bottom and Atlanta being on the top. And the other 28 cities are those muted gray lines in the background. And you can see that the average of these 30 cities has been about a 6% increase every year on average. It's also been a 6.5% increase every year on average for New York. But that rate of increase for us is going down every year, while you can see for some of the other utilities, the curves are increasing. And both Atlanta and Chicago, the two outliers in here, receive part of their funding from their city's general funds. And in New York City, the customers pay 100% of the cost of water and wastewater. And here we are, again, the 30 cities, with New York being just about in the middle, the green bar in the middle, and the average for the 30 cities being the horizontal line. So again, New York is about 4% below the average. So it's not just about increasing the rate by 2.1%, but it's also providing a number of benefits to our customers, especially those who are lower income or seniors. So I mentioned the minimum charge before. 149,000 of our 835,000 customers are billed on the minimum charge if they use less than about 95 gallons of water a day. And again, we are keeping their rate the same now for the 4th year in a row. The leak forgiveness program, which the board liberalized a couple of years ago, so that we will forgive leaks for what we call maintainable leaks, leaks that you can see, your kitchen faucet, your toilet. In the past, we didn't give you an allowance for those leaks, but now we do. And now we have, I think, over 100,000 subscribers to our automated leak notification program. So people who are on automated meter reading, which is almost all of our customers, can receive an automated email from us or an automated letter if their water usage spikes. The Service Line Protection Program, where we have over 200,000 subscribers who pay about $12 a month to protect their water and sewer service lines from breaking or getting clogged. And for that $12 a month premium, if they have a problem with the service lines, the vendor, American Water Resources, will come and fix it at no additional charge. And for those customers who have needed repairs, we have saved them collectively $50 million compared to what they would have had to pay to a private plumber to fix those same conditions. 2 years ago, we introduced the Home Water Assistance Program for low-income customers who qualified for federal home energy assistance. And this year, last year, we expanded it from the 12,000 heat population to 50,000. We also included as eligible homeowners those seniors or disabled homeowners who receive the senior or disabled homeowner exemption on their property tax from the New York City Department of Finance. This year, we're expanding the senior population by about 68,000 to a total population of 120,000. We are going to include seniors with incomes up to $50,000 a year. The previous limit in the program that we expanded last year was an income limit of about $37,000. Oops, sorry about that. And a program that we're newly introducing this year, the Multifamily Affordable Housing Assistance Program. Working with the city's Housing Preservation and Development Department, we are going to roll out a program that will provide a $250 annual credit to 40,000 affordable housing units. So 40,000 individual apartments, and in order to qualify, the building has to have 100% of its apartments be affordable, and they have to sign an agreement with the city's Housing Preservation and Development Department or the Housing Development Corporation to keep those apartments affordable for at least the next 15 years. And just like the Home Water Assistance Program that provides $118 credit, which is about a quarter of the annual minimum charge for a single-family home, this would represent about a 25% reduction in the annual bill for those affordable housing units that are on our multifamily conservation program. And finally, Mayor de Blasio announced 2 weeks ago that starting July 1st, he will no longer request that the water system pay a rental payment to the city's general fund. Under the financing agreement we have with New York City and under the lease that we have with New York City, the mayor can request a rental payment, which in the last few years could be over $200 million a year. Mayor de Blasio said 2 weeks ago, I'm no longer going to ask for the rental payment. That saves the system for this coming year $122 million, and that's going to be flowed back to owners of 1, 2, and 3 family homes in the form of a $183 one-time credit that will start appearing on your bills between July and September, depending on what your billing cycle is. But it's not just the 1 to 3 family homeowners who are going to benefit. Every building owner, every one of our 835,000 customers is going to benefit by the elimination of the rental payment. Over the next 4 years, it will save the water system $1.1 billion, which means it's the equivalent of a 7% savings for each customer through the year 2020. And finally, for multifamily conservation program, I said earlier that we have 26,000 buildings that participate in the program. 10,000 of them have not yet complied with the 2 criteria for the program, which is having low-flow fixtures installed in the apartments and having a modern meter that is equipped for automated meter reading. Under our previous tariff, the deadline for coming into compliance was this June 30th, and these buildings on average that are participating in the program, by paying a flat rate, they are saving about 31% on their water bills versus if they were to convert to metered billing. And we didn't want to have a lot of these buildings, 10,000 of them, abruptly have to pay 31% more. So we've given them a 6-month extension to comply until December 31st. If they're not in compliance after December 31st, their next bill will contain a 10% surcharge. We want this to be an inducement for buildings to come into compliance because we need these buildings to have the low-flow fixtures, to manage their water properly through the automated meter reading system, and we need them to reduce their consumption by 5% over the next 6 years. So this lowest rate increase in 15 years was made possible by strong revenues, low interest rates. We've benefited since 2008, since the recession, and for us, the one silver lining of the recession is that our interest rates on the nearly $30 billion we have in debt have been historically low. We saved $121 million this year, and we've also been aggressively buying back debt before it would otherwise be retired, and in that way we're saving $1.4 billion over the remaining life, over what would have been the remaining life of that debt. We're also going to finish the fiscal year spending $126 million less on operations than we had budgeted. And amidst all this good news is an area of concern this shows the history of our capital commitments, expenditures, and in the red line is the dollars that we pay in debt service each year. And that red line keeps going up because every time we make investments in our infrastructure, and we will be investing between $1 and $2 billion every year for the next 10 years, that red line will continue to go up. And as you can see in the pie chart, it's the blue slice, which is the largest slice, and operations and maintenance, but the red slice, used to be the largest slice, but because of our continued investment, debt service has become the largest slice for about the last 4 or 5 years, and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. And then just quickly, how did we get to the 2.1%? If you look in the upper right-hand corner, our total system need is $4.7 billion for next year. We expect to end this year with a cash balance of just under $1.979 billion, which at the very beginning of the fiscal year in July, we're going to use that to pay a major portion of our debt service. We also have some revenue from upstate because in-city customers don't pay for the water that gets consumed upstate. About 10% of our water gets consumed in the counties north and west of New York City. We sell wholesale to about 40 upstate water utilities. So our revenue need for the coming year, the yellow cell, is $3.548 billion. And the orange cell next to it, we expect to end this year collecting $3.7 billion. And if we didn't change our rates, we wouldn't collect $3.7 billion next year by keeping the rates the same, because we have been on a long-term decline in consumption, which is good. It declines about 1.5% per year. That means we're using less water. That means we'll be in much better shape in the future to meet growing demand. But it also means we won't be taking in as much revenue. And the programs that we've rolled out for affordable housing and low-income homeowners, that's revenue also that we got this year that we won't be getting again next year. So that leaves us with, in the green cell, $3.475 billion in revenue if we kept the rates the same, but we need 3.548, which is the difference of $73 million. And that $73 million divided by the 3.548 is 2.1%. So again, just to summarize, a 2.1% increase, and if you have written comments, and Eric will remind you at the end of the hearing, if you want to submit testimony, you can do it by mail or email, and Eric will repeat this information, and we'll keep it up for the rest of the hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to open up the floor to comments from anyone from the public who would like to make them. We ask that you keep your remarks to no more than 5 minutes so that everyone can speak. At this time, as we have no pre-registered speakers, is there anyone from the audience that would like to address the water board? Seeing none, at this point, as Steve said, before we conclude the hearing, we'd like to remind you again that all written comments can be submitted by 5 p.m. Friday, May 12th. The address is up behind me, 5917 Junction Boulevard, 8th floor, Flushing, New York, 11373. You can also submit them by email at nycwaterboard@dep.nyc.gov. We thank everyone for coming, and as there's no further business, this hearing is adjourned.